telling everyone yesterday about Alex Gray, the artist whose work is based on the psychedelic trips that he's taken. Astonishing art, if you don't know it. He quipped the other day that it was just like the world is on a big bad trip at the moment. And it's as good a summary as any I've heard, I think. Tonight I want to talk about absolute and relative love. I'm talking Dharma circles about absolute truth, relative truth. I also just want to link that in with the teachings about loving kindness, compassion, empathy, joy, equanimity. One of in my work and in working as doing my best to teach the Dharma as well, that one of the great trips for us in this work is relying on others for our dose of love, relying on others to be loved. John Wellwood wrote this short line from a poem. Again and again it defeats me, this reliance on others for bliss. If we look at ourselves, without going to others, we can see that we all have moments where we can love freely, openly, easily, but it's kind of hard to sustain, right? I see there's a few couples here, you'll be nodding your heads possibly all day, right? And it like we can know that this sense of when we experience this kind of perfect love, we know it. We've all sensed it at some level, whether in someone else's company or by ourselves, or perhaps in a meditation. This touching into this sense of this love that we know is just radiating there. It's not something that we need to, in a way, work at. Like when we touch that, we know it's just flowing. There's an ease to it. But in the way, what lies at the root of every relationship problem is this core wounding of the heart. And the way then that we've adapted to that in whatever way, an adaptation that often is like a shutting off to the world, a tightening to the world, a way of protecting something precious inside. This wounding, though, depending on how we were brought up and what was happening, it shows up as a sense of not feeling lovable, not enough, not good enough. And it sort of shuts down our capacity to be with others, to trust others, to connect, to have a healthy sense of esteem and boundaries. So even though we long for that at so many levels, that this longing for connection and love can be actually one of the most difficult things for us to touch into and to allow it to circulate freely within us. And John Wellwood likened it, which many people have, to this pure essence of love, to like the sun and the cloudless sky and this clear luminous light, he said, that shines through relationships most brightly actually at the beginning and the end. And that end sometimes is death. The beginnings, you might say, the romance or birth, if it's a baby. We might feel it when, say, a loved one's dying. I remember with my brother, when he'd had a stroke, and just that sense of how it just magnifies that feeling, kind of like 100-fold almost or something, realizing of how much they mean. You know, he meant to me, and some of you will know that too with the passing of a loved one. And that's where this kind of natural love, this, you might say, this absolute sense of love is just there. And it's like we don't need to do anything for it, it just happens. And when we sense this, there's also like a sense of a natural nourishment that goes with this. A natural way that we're fed through that. Part of us that is feel the openness, and it's kind of like something flowing into us. And one Sufi guy I know described it as like the lips of the heart opening to the world and just drinking in the divine nectar. Sweet way of saying it. It also points to how this sort of sits there as a seed within us. And sometimes dormant, that in our day-to-day going around work and other things, we can kind of just really tune out from that. One of the things I love about my work is that we're trained to look for the good in others, to look for the good and to support that. What's affirming, what's uplifting? How do we contact that in someone to say, look here, not there, over here. And this is where the deep fulfillment is, in these places. This place that's deeper than personality traits. It's deeper than the pain, the confusion, and those places where we forget it. And this, so this meditation we've just done, some of you probably know that it's called Metta Bhavana, the cultivation of metta, or actually the remembering, more precisely, the remembering of that. I really like that one. That just sort of resonates. It's like, oh yeah, that's what I have to do. It's like, it makes it really simple. There's no real effort there needed. Just keeping an eye on time. And so even though we know this channel of, you might say, this pure love, this one that's there already within us, this channel gets blocked. Weeds and other things grow across it, which are these defensive patterns we have, the protective patterns we have. And this thing of like somewhere in between that beginning and the end there is the place where we can often tune out, where we get into these power struggles and forget. Places where our emotional triggers are touched most deeply. A place where that natural love is clouded and dampened down even. There's a good reason in the way that that happens. After the beginning, for instance. Because what happens is in that opening, what we're doing is we're giving space for those things that clog the channels to come up. We give space for them to be seen. We give space for them to be healed. And on a retreat, it's not uncommon that someone will have a kind of breakthrough, you might say, where they're in love with the world for a little bit. The next day, there's a, oh my God, it's worse than ever. Same in therapy as well. And it's kind of like a misunderstanding of the process to say that we've gone backwards. Because really all we've done is kind of open the door to the things that we've been hiding away, the way that we've learned to push them away. So really this process is really ongoing thing of reconnecting, remembering, resetting our intention, and constantly turning our mind back towards it. So I was saying there before that the important thing is not so much the feeling, but the intention. Intention is what sets us free. So then when we do have like painful feelings, triggers and things, when we've worked on the intention as the core of what metta is about, rather than the feeling, then when we're triggered, we can remember that, to just keep turning back towards that. It doesn't matter where we have a pleasant feeling, an unpleasant feeling, or a sense of being a bit tuned out. Whatever it is, we can set our intention with that. We can love being spaced out, for instance. We can love resentment. We can love anger. We can be gentle with that. So here when we say relative, it means dependent on time and circumstance. In one way, as you might say, when someone's doing what we want them to do, is another way to say it. It's not all the time, right? And there's this kind of want. Maybe there's someone out there who will just love me 100% of the time. Probably not going to happen. Probably not going to happen. And if we can turn to face this and take this on, there may be 1 in a million. maybe. But at some point, there's probably going to be some disagreement between, perhaps on my side or their side about what's happening. The chances of 100% harmony, probably unlikely at best. But this yearning persists. This yearning persists. So that's where the skill comes in with the practice. Yearning generally is wanting to go outwards somewhere to find that person, that thing maybe as well. But this is about our relationship with yearning itself. So if you like to even turn in towards the heart right now, maybe we can just do a little thing with that, which we've done before. You just close the eyes and just turn towards the heart. And just see there, and you consider your relationships, the close ones, that longing. The yearning. Maybe you might also notice how you manage that sometimes. How do you manage that yearning? Close it down, pretend it's not there, or whatever it is for you. Can we just be with the yearning? Let ourselves rest with that. And the words of one Sufi teacher, in a way, allow a certain perfection with that yearning. Allow the yearning to have a perfection. And this is like the infinite running through us here now. The spirit, the deathless, whatever you would like to call it. And that this yearning then is this gateway into perhaps this more absolute love. And we kind of fall into trouble when we transfer this onto someone else. We try to seek it, a kind of perfection in imperfect circumstances. And this is not to dismiss relationship at all. That's really more to put it in perspective. Because riding the waves of friendships, companionships, more intimate relationships. So we ride that wave. It's pretty easy to be projecting out this need to be accepted, that thing we most yearn for. In some ways, can we offer that to others as well? It's only fair, right, that we do that. So with these wounds that block this natural expression of love, part of the healing is just knowing that whatever parenting we had, no parent was ever going to be able to be absolutely attuned to 100% of our needs and wants. But somehow we need that as a child. We need to hold that want. And in not getting that, someone described it as, the pain so much that we just push it out of our consciousness, and then we develop what we call the psychic scab over it. A really lovely way of saying it. It says a lot, a psychic scab. And that scab is our grievance, our unhappiness. And it serves as this protective function. Kind of makes us a bit harder, a bit tougher. So we don't have to experience the underlying pain of not being fully loved 100%. Of course, then that keeps us a little bit isolated, separated, disconnected. And mostly then what happens is that it all gets covered with resentment. And this is the key. This resentment becomes a major defensive weapon. Resentment. And even after years of therapy, I'm finding all sorts of layers there, I'm going to say, for myself. So within this path, then within the Dharma, forgiveness is key. Forgiveness, and understanding that process. Because otherwise this resentment will just keep undermining us again and again and again. The resentment there is sort of like just also becomes at some point the block to allowing love to really touch us, to let it in, to let that natural inflow of nourishment, emotional nourishment to come in, but also then to go out. This was mentioned a couple of times yesterday when we were going through a long forgiveness process. People were reconnecting and understanding how they had actually kept people out of their hearts, but also kept themselves out of their own hearts through holding these grudges. Very beautiful process. Very touching. D.H. Lawrence wrote, "Those who go on a search for love find only their own lovelessness." So let's do one last little exercise. Again, just turning inside to that arena of the heart. And perhaps bring to mind someone you'd like to love more in life. And just notice what it's like to want that. Again, we're going back to the original intention of loving kindness practice. As you rest into that heart center then, is there a way we can sink our taproot of awareness deep into that source there that allows you to connect to others in a more powerful way? Straight up, confident, rooted in the own ground of your own being. Making a stand for love. A guardian for love. And see what it's like to turn the mind towards appreciation for this person. Just for the wonderful tapestry of life that they are. Perfect, imperfect, emotional, kind, rational, irrational, all interwoven. And see if you can find that place inside that might just drop the fight. Put down the weapons. And acknowledge in yourself the ordinary, everyday heroism to do that. This opening to real intimacy.